So even though I can't see you, I do get a list, and so I'll go down and do as
What?
we normally do. Everybody,
Yeah.
briefly, it's a crowded day today, so just let me know who you are, where you are, and what you've seen in the sky recently. So we'll start with Chris. Chris O.
I'm sorry, I thought I was muted that whole time. I'm Chris Olson. I am presently at my home in Campton Hills, Illinois, which is about 48 miles west of Chicago. The latest thing I've seen in the sky is the sun a few days ago. I am calibrating my new photoheliograph, which is a old name for a solar telescope that takes pictures. So
Sounds great.
yeah.
Felix Molina, where are you, and what are you seeing?
I am in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Well, actually, I'm looking at Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus, and the conjunction between the Venus and the Moon. I'm looking also to the X space satellites.
Fabulous.
Yes, in the early in the night.
Al Lamperti.
Yeah, I'm outside Philadelphia, and what do I see is mostly clouds. I haven't been out with the telescope in a few months. Same with Bob, I think, too, where he's just
Okay. Carmen.
I am Carmen from Uruguay. A hot summer, 36 centigrades in the morning, storms at night. So I have not been able to see anything.
Okay. Chris Kennedy.
Better than New York. I'll just put it that way, because there are other Tucsonians who can be more specific. But apologies to Maureen and a few others that I know in the Northeast, but pretty nice weather here.
Justin.
Watertown, Connecticut, and the planetary alignment.
Fabulous. Larry.
Right now in north of downtown Tucson, Arizona, the last thing I tried to see was the moon going across the Pleiades and take a picture of it, but I was on Mount Graham outside the vat on the platform, and it was too windy, so I wasn't able to get a picture.
Fabulous. Juan Pablo.
Hello, I'm in my car right now. Sorry, I'm driving. Hopefully this won't drop. I'm on my way to hear confessions for a whole bunch of high school students. The last thing I watched was Jupiter and the transit of Europa, the transit of the shadow of Europa over it.
Wonderful.
Nice cloud. Thank you.
Maureen.
I'm in New York, and as usual, I didn't see much of anything but sleet and snow.
Okay. Rob Lorenz.
Yeah, I'm in Tucson right now, but I just got back from DC, and in the plane on the way to DC, I saw a great, beautiful view of the moon right next to Venus, which was awesome.
Fabulous. Tina.
We have only clouds.
Okay, where are you?
In Louisville, Kentucky, it's 35 degrees and raining, and has been cloudy for days.
And I will assume that you also speak for Chris, even though he's logged on separately.
Yes, he's right by me.
Okay. David Wells.
Yeah, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. Like Tina, I'm seeing a lot of clouds, but between the clouds, I have gotten a few peaks of the moon, the Orion Nebula, and the Pleiades night before last. So that was fun.
Great. Tim Suppy.
Good morning. Yes, nothing but clouds here today.
And remind us where you are.
I'm in eastern Illinois, Westville.
Okay. Dennis McCarthy.
It's frigid and overcast in Denver, but at the end of last week, I pointed out in the sky to my grandchildren the big bright Jupiter near the moon.
Fabulous. Francis.
Hi, greetings from Davenport, Iowa. It's snowing and 8 below Celsius, so not a whole lot to see.
Okay, Jeff.
Well, here at Manaville, it's about 70 miles east of New York City on Long Island, and there's 2 inches of snow, and it's 33 degrees. But I haven't seen anything lately, not for want of trying, but I just haven't, able to get up there.
Okay, Linda.
Hi, it's Linda and Paul. We're in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It was very cloudy and a lot of snow today, but about a week ago, we did see maybe 4 or 5 planets.
Fabulous. Margaret Ann.
Hello, I'm close to Ann Arbor. It's -3 Celsius. And I've not been spending a lot of time outside of the house. Yeah, that -3 again. And but I've seen Jupiter and I've seen the moon, of course, all naked eye.
Great. Michelle.
So it's here in Philadelphia. The skies have been pretty gray, but I've been looking at stuff that falls from the sky, a bunch of meteorite samples for a paper I'm writing.
Oh, wonderful. What are you doing with those meteorite samples?
I'm writing about the tangled history of how we figured out they came from the sky.
Fabulous. Yeah. Pam Snyder. You're muted.
Morning, Pam Snyder here in Glendale, Arizona. It's very overcast right now, but with promises that it's going to get a little cooler and perhaps we'll have rain on Friday, which we sorely need.
Wonderful. Stan.
Philadelphia, Northeast Philadelphia, and 34 degrees and rising, 3 inches of snow last night and cloudy, but I did get the chance to see Orion a few nights ago.
Excellent. Phil.
I'm in Eastern North Carolina. Lately, the sky's been pretty cloudy, so it's given me opportunity to read this very nice book.
Oh, hey. Thank you for doing that, so I don't have to. And Tom Toll.
Hey, brother, Tom Toll, North Philadelphia, same view as everybody else in the neighborhood. So a couple of the planets in alignment. That's all.
Okay, Karen?
After some teasing of 70s weather in Atlanta for the last week, we are back down into the 40s and rainy and yucky weather right now, cloudy and rainy.
Okay, thank you. I think that's pretty much everybody who's logged on except for the people who are going to be speaking to us. So I will turn it over to Paul Gabor. Tell us what's news at the VAT this month. Paul, can you hear us? Paul, I see you, but I'm not hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's it. Yes, thank you.
Well, I don't know what happened, but my microphone is not recognized right now. Anyway, so I was saying that as Pam mentioned, there is a drought. And in a meeting this morning, I heard that Mount Graham will need 8 feet of snow just to get out of drought conditions. So that's kind of unlikely to happen. So we are kind of preparing for a nice forest fire season, maybe starting already in March. Anyway, the one thing I'm excited about that happened at the VAT over the last few weeks was that Larry Lebowski and his illustrious collaborators, Mark Trueblood and Robert Crawford, tested so-called donut routine, which will allow us to collimate the telescope pretty much on a press of a button. And it's all very promising and exciting. So I'm very happy about that. I could go on and on about how this works for a while. It involves Zernike coefficients. So I'm sure many of you are going to be very excited. And the other thing is we did host a star party, that is to say, David Brown and I, on Friday. And it was cool. It was for a group of young Catholic professionals in Tucson. And we managed to see a lot of stuff, including Europa coming out from kind of behind, being hid by Jupiter. So the rising of Europa was a cool little feature of the exercise.
What's that?
Sorry?
Okay, that's great. What's coming up in the next month on the telescope? Basically, the derotator now works perfectly.
Well, the derotator works, I think, mechanically. What we need to do to really get full advantage of it now is to do a new pointing run. So basically, tell the telescope where is up, things like that. It's a new pointing model, and hopefully we'll manage to get round to that next week. Then Chris Corbally is supposed to go up for a run with VatSpec, and I think that's pretty much it. I think Rich Boyle might go up as well at some point.
What's the subject that Chris Corbally is going to be observing with his spectrometer?
I think it's, as usual, one of his chemical peculiars, or these essentially double star systems. So I'm not quite sure which one he wants to observe right now. Maybe both of them. I think he has at least two of these systems that he's been following with a group of, well, he doesn't like calling them amateur astronomers because they are really very professional in their equipment and everything, but let's call them citizen scientists. And so apparently there is a group of something like 30 astronomers, citizen scientist astronomers who have spectrographs in their backyards. And he collaborates with that network, monitoring these binary systems that exhibit very interesting behaviors like mass transfer and so on. Anyway, he is the one who can supply some precision measurements while they provide the full coverage of the phase space. So.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a whole lot, and thanks everybody for coming. I see that Diana's present, at least in my list, so if you can unmute yourself and say hi, we'll know you're there.
I'm here. Hi.
Great. Well, let me welcome you, Diana, to the full moon monthly meetup. And it's a delight to have you here. As someone with a long last name myself, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us how you pronounce your name.
Well, hello, everybody. I really love the lead up to this moment. I love hearing what everybody has seen lately in the sky and everything. My name is Diana. Okay, if you want to say it the Finnish way, it would be Hannikainen. And that is the correct pronunciation in the Finnish language. But I anglicize it to make it a little bit simpler. So I often just sort of roll the syllables together and I call myself Hannikainen.
Wonderful. Well, this brings up the first question. I've got this long Italian name, but I said it the American way all the time because I was raised in America. Right. Where were you raised? Where are you from?
Oh, this gets a little bit convoluted. My father was born in Finland, and he's a Finnish diplomat. His parents happened to work for the Finnish Foreign Service as well. And so my father grew up a little bit all over the place. He spent some childhood years in Poland and Sweden, and then he came over to the US. He went to Columbia University. He lived in Pelham for a while and went to Pelham High School, and then he went to Columbia. And so he grew up a little bit all over the place. My mother's Italian. And guess what? She also had diplomats for parents. And so she also was all over the world, dragged all over the world. And my parents happened to meet in under circumstances where my father had to go back. So he graduated from Columbia because he was a Finnish citizen. He had to do the Finnish military service because it's mandatory. They take your passport away if you turn 26 and haven't done your military service or gotten an exemption from it. It might have changed now, but this was back in the day. And my Italian grandparents happened to be posted to Finland at the time. And through a series of fortuitous circumstances, my parents met, got married, and then my father became a diplomat. So he dragged us all over the world. And so I grew up a little bit, and it was at the time, it was Yugoslavia. And so we were, of course, in the capital city of Yugoslavia at the time, Serbia, now Belgrade. We lived in Brazil for a while. And that's, I think, where I really started to appreciate big sky. And because we were right in the center of the country. And then we lived a little bit in Italy. To my mom's chagrin, my dad was posted to Rome. And she was like, I don't want to be around family. But he got that posting. And so we were in Rome for a while. And then a smattering of other countries, England. And I also spent some time visiting my parents in Canada, my grandparents in Canada, India, and so on. So all over the place.
Where did you pick up your accent, I guess is the real question, because it's clearly not a British accent.
It used to be very British. The thing is, I went to international school. We speak English at home. It's the language that my parents met in and fell in love in. And my father had a very American accent. My mother had a very British accent. And then throughout my school years, we had to go to whatever school was available. And it was an international school. Sometimes it was run by Americans. Sometimes it was run by Brits. And of course, as you know, the Brits have so many different accents. And, you know, it depended on who my homeroom teacher was. In second grade, I had a very Irish accent because my second grade teacher was Mrs. Brasic. She had married a Serbian from Dublin. And so my accent wavered. It depends on whom I'm talking to.
Fabulous. Well, somehow from all of that traveling the surface of the Earth, you became an astronomer. How did that happen?
Oh, so many stories also involved with that. Well, as you know, I'm with Sky and Telescope magazine. And my father was actually a subscriber when he was living in Pelham and studying at Columbia. And by the time I came along, he had let his subscription lapse. This was decades ago, and it was a bit more difficult. You couldn't just press a button and change your address and so on. But he had kept his old issues of Sky and Telescope lying around. So I have vague memories, and my parents tell me that I was leafing through old issues of Sky and Telescope before I could read, you know, just looking at the photos and everything. And I was very drawn to photos of the galaxies, stars, etc. This was when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. And then when I was about 9 years old, we moved to Brazil. And I would say that this is where the real clincher came. We lived in Brasilia, in the center of the country, and we had access to one of my mother's third cousins popped out of nowhere, and they had a ranch outside of Brasilia, to about 200 kilometers. And so this was in the 70s, and as you can imagine, it was very not built up. There was nothing there. I mean, the closest town to the ranch was a small village called Paracatu, I think, with maybe 30 people or something. And so my dad would take me out at night. My dad, obviously having been a former subscriber to Sky, he was fascinated by the universe, stars. He assembled his own telescope when he was 12 and everything. He'd take me out at night and he'd show me the constellations and the planets and everything. And in those days, I don't know, I think many of you might remember, in those days, it was so exciting to see a satellite, right? Because they were only like 2 or 3 in any one evening. And so he'd show me the satellites and he explained to me about the satellite disappearing behind the shadow of the Earth. I was just fascinated by that. And one weekend, a family friend brought along a scope, a small refractor, and set it up in somewhere in the middle of the Mato Grosso. And he was regaling everybody with views of Saturn in the eyepiece. And so everybody lined up, you know, all the adults lined up, the kids lined up. By the time I got there, you know, I peered through the eyepiece. I couldn't see anything. And I was like, do I say something? Like, why am I failing? Why am I not seeing this thing? And you know, I said in a small voice at the end, I said, no, I have to say something. I'm not going to pretend that I've seen it. So I said, I'm sorry, I don't see anything. And he explained to me about the rotation of the Earth and so on. So he had to reposition the telescope. And I bent over, looked through that eyepiece, and when I saw Saturn that first time through the eyepiece, it just blew me. I literally fell over. And I wish I had something more exciting to say than Saturn, because I think for about 95% of astronomers, it is Saturn, but it was Saturn. And I couldn't believe that I was looking with my own eyes. I was looking at something that I'd seen in the pages of Sky and Telescope and my dad's coffee table books and everything. And after that, I just couldn't leave it alone. And so I ended up studying it, went to the University of Edinburgh, did it for undergraduate, and then went back to Finland to explore my Finnish roots, where I did my postgraduate studies and PhD and so on.
So what astronomy did you wind up doing? What was your thesis on? What's your field of specialty?
I was, the broad label is high energy astrophysics. And I specialized in microquasars. So as the name suggests, small scale analogs of distant quasars. And microquasars are in binary systems with a stellar mass black hole that is siphoning material off its companion star. But you have the same sort of physics going on. You have an accretion disk forming around the black hole and then instabilities in the accretion disk. And then the inner parts of the accretion disk get shot out through some mechanism, I think, that's still being investigated, involving magnetism and so on, get shot out at relativistic speeds. And so I was studying the accretion disks using X-ray satellites, and my big fortune was forging a connection with the University of Sydney in Australia. And so I'd go down there and work with Professor Dick Hunstead at the University of Sydney and work on radio data. So I was putting together the X-rays from the accretion disk and the radio emission from the jets and trying to figure out what the connection was between the both. And
you're using data like this. Do you consider yourself an observer or a theorist, or do those terms really don't fit?
They mesh because I don't think I came up with, well, no, I did. I kind of discovered a connection, but whether I made a theory about it, I don't think so. But it's sort of using the underlying theory with more observations, you get more data, you understand the theory a bit better and can tweak it a bit. And then that makes you realize, oh, you need more observations because you have to answer that. So it's a bit of a sort of self-feeding thing, but I'd say more of an observer, I think.
Wonderful. Meanwhile, did you stay as an amateur as well as a professional? Did you ever have a little telescope?
During my study years, I did not, but I was involved with quite a few clubs in Finland, and I'd visit some of the clubs in Australia, and I'd go along to their meetings and so on. I was moving around so much, so I had, one or two of my dad's old refractors just gathering dust, but I lived in cities at the time as well, but I have remedied that since.
How? Tell us.
After I started leaving research and trying to find another path, which is where I am now, but probably more on that later, I joined, I was living in Florida at the time, and I joined a club there, and that's when I started learning the joys of actually tinkering around with the telescope, because as a professional astronomer, as you all know, you don't get close to it, especially not if you're doing X-ray radio astronomy. I mean, radio astronomy, you can go, I went out to the telescope, Australia Telescope Compact Array a couple of times, but you're stuck in a control room. I mean, you could go and walk up and down by the dishes and watch the kangaroos jump by, but it's not the same as actually handling and moving it around and pointing it at what you want to point. And so I've done some optical observing, but again, stuck in a control room watching the guide star, in the monitor, and that's about it.
So you mentioned this transition going from doing research to doing, would it be book writing? Was it popular talks? Did you have your own television show? What was going on?
Yeah, no, I didn't have, I wish I would have had, that would have been fun to have had a television show. No, I did. We moved to, my husband and I, that is, we moved to Florida for family reasons to look after his elderly dad. And at the same time, I was based in Finland then. I'd done my postdoc in the UK, and I was back in Finland, and I had contemplated going to Australia because I loved it so much, but all my family was basically based in Europe. They were in China at the time as well, but that's another story. And Australia just felt a little bit far. And so I hung on to the research I was doing, but I wasn't fully, I was getting a little bit restless. And we moved to Florida to look after my father-in-law. And while there, like I said, I joined the Astronomical Society of the Palm Beaches and reconnected with that visceral feeling of the night sky and everything. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I need to do something else. And I was just scrolling online looking for things, and I saw an ad for observing editor at Sky and Telescope magazine. And I thought, wow, after I finished my undergraduate studies at the University of Edinburgh, there were two paths I wanted to go down. One was science communication and one was research. I really wanted to write, do science writing. But the research won out then, and so that's why I ended up going on with postgrad studies and the PhD and all that. So when I saw this opportunity so I'd already been thinking, I was writing the newsletter for my club, and I was already thinking maybe I could look for another path. And so I applied, and when I got the job, I couldn't believe my luck, because I thought, how lucky you get to fulfill your second dream in life. I fulfilled my first dream, which was the research, and then to be a part of Sky and Telescope, and so it was just phenomenal.
So what year would this have been?
2017.
So this is relatively recent,
Yes,
not quite
yes.
10 years ago. Did you actually move to Cambridge at that point, or could you do this remotely from Florida?
I had to move to Cambridge, and I had 3 weeks from accepting the job to starting it here. So it was a bit of a flurry. And that first winter was, a lot of you mentioned snow. After 7 years in Florida, my first winter up here in Cambridge was a little bit shocking. And that was the famous, any of you who were here up in the, where are we, Northeast, might remember that was the year that we had a nor'easter in January, a nor'easter in February, a nor'easter in March. And by the time we got to the nor'easter in April, everybody was calling it the four-easter.
My goodness. Where do you wind up living then? Are you in Cambridge or out in the burbs or what?
In Cambridge the first couple of years, and now west of Boston in a suburb called Sudbury, just south of Concord.
I know it well. Right.
Oh, good.
As a matter of fact, those of us who are looking online, this is maybe one of the things we'll edit out if we turn this into a podcast, but you'll see next to me my partner in crime, Dan Davis. He and I were the Turn Left at Orion guys, and I'm visiting him this week. And actually, I'll see Diana live tomorrow, I guess, because we're going to the local astronomy club meeting.
Excellent.
But this is, coming from Arizona, this is a bit of a shock to see snow again out in the
Yeah, we've got a fair amount here. Yep.
So you're an assistant editor. Who was the editor at that point? Who were you working with?
The editor-in-chief was Peter Tyson.
Okay.
And we were 5 editors at the time. We had our science editor, Camille Carlisle, who's still science editor, news editor, Monica Young, she's still news editor. Sean Walker is our equipment astrophotography editor. He's still with us. And at the time, J.R. Johnson Rohr stepped in for Alan McRobert, because Alan McRobert retired. So she stepped into his position, and I was hired as observing editor. So
did you ever get to work with Alan? I mean, that's the name that you usually think of when you hear Sky and Telescope, at least somebody of my age.
Yes, I never worked directly with him, because by then he had fully retired, and he writes our online weekly Sky at a Glance. So he's still doing that. It goes up on Fridays. So I never got to actually work directly with him, but that was when we still had an office, a full office before the pandemic. He'd come in once a week and work on Thursdays for his Friday blog.
So Sky and Telescope has gone through a few interesting changes in the years you've been there. I don't know how much of the dirty laundry you want to spread, but just give people an outline. When you were there, it was still sort of a privately run, trying to make money kind of magazine. And now it's a branch of the American Astronomical Society. Can you give us a little bit of the road of how you went from the one to the other?
Yes. I joined in August 2017, and that's when we were owned by a company called F&W Media. And they had a stable of hobby magazines. They had, I think, something like 40 titles. And most of the I think they focused on all manner of hobbies. And by December 2017, there were rumors of some people being laid off from some of the other titles. And then we had somebody on staff laid off in January 2018, and everybody started ringing the alarm bells. It's like, something's going on, something's going on. And March 2019, they declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And so we were all wondering, what on earth were we going to do? And I know Al Lamperti is there among all of you. Hi, Al. I think Al is one of the many people who was instrumental in getting together like the Friends of Sky and Telescope and try to find a way to help us out of this hole that we were in. But the AAS, the American Astronomical Society, got interested because I think primarily because of a former editor-in-chief, Rick Feinberg. He was at the time the press officer at the AAS, and he knew that the AAS wanted to get more involved in the amateur community. At the time, they were talking about how can they find a melding of the amateur and the professional community. And Rick was hearing all of this going on because he was based at the AAS headquarters. He knew about the Sky and Telescope, F&W meetup bankruptcy, and he suggested, why don't the AAS look into acquiring Sky and Telescope? And they did, and that was June 2019. And since then, they've overseen our operations, and I hope we'll last like this together for a very long time.
Right. How many issues has Sky and Telescope put out?
Well, that's a very good question, and we know that because the February issue is our 1000th.
What else was special about the February issue, being the 1000th issue?
Okay, it was the last one of Peter Tyson as editor-in-chief.
And so issue 1001, the editor-in-chief is?
Me.
Yeah. What's the typical day of an editor-in-chief of Sky and Telescope magazine?
Mostly pulling one's hair out, trying to think how to keep everything on track. Oh, it's incredibly inspiring. I've not had much opportunity yet to fully absorb and enjoy it because we're still looking for my replacement. So we're one full editor down. And of course, I've had to learn all these things that I never thought I'd need to know, like, I don't know, ads. I've never placing ads. So I've had to learn all these new things, but it's fine. I love learning new things, so it's fine. But there's a lot of, I think what I like the best about this is that just before we ship the files to the printer, I get to see every single page that goes to the printer. So I get to see the whole, the hard work that everybody on staff has done sort of like come together. And it's a very, very moving moment. And so that just happened on Monday. So that's a special day because then I set everything aside and I just go through every single page. But otherwise it's basically like not terribly different from what I was doing before because I'm still doing quite a lot of editing and writing, which I would like to do. And there's a lot of chatting with people, discussing what's coming up next. And there are lots of different things and it's all fun.
One of the things that makes Sky and Telescope different from a lot of the other magazines that have gone digital and are trying to figure out how to make a living at it is there is something special about having the hard copy in your hand that you can sit and look at the incredible images. Who do you think now is the audience of Sky and Telescope? Who's reading this thing? Who are you writing for?
We are still carrying over what I perceive as the tradition of the dedicated observer and dedicated astronomer. And our science stories are also incredibly finely honed. Camille is a phenomenal editor. But so I think the way I would like to see it, coming from where I have come from, I would like to see Sky and Telescope as a magazine for all astronomers because observers are interested in the science behind what they're looking at. And quite a lot of the scientists that I speak to, and even from when I was in research, I know that when you're in X-ray astronomy, it's a bit different. Most people can't even recognize, most X-ray astronomers don't even recognize a constellation because it's just, swivel the satellite to wherever. But so many are interested and want to know more about what they're looking at from the naked eye point of view. And so I'd like to see it as a magazine for all astronomers who are curious, all astronomers who are interested, want to learn more. Even I find that a lot of the observing articles that I was editing in my previous role, they also have a lot for the researcher, and the science articles have a lot for the observer. And of course, there are all the lovely telescope tinkering articles and the astrophotography ones as well, where even if you're not an astrophotographer, it's still interesting. It's so fascinating to know how these things work. And it's wonderful. You go to a star party and you might be there with your little refractor just swiveling around the sky, but next door you might have somebody with all the cables and the equipment imaging. And it's I think it's gratifying to know a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what they're doing as well, because we are sharing that same sky after all in different ways. But one thing that I would like to say is I myself, coming from a professional, more professional background, now getting back into the amateur as I was as a teenager and so on, I would very much like to say, I think Paul Garbo mentioned the network of citizen scientists with spectrographs in their backyards. And that is something that I've been particularly interested in, the professional amateur collaboration. In fact, I write the column every 2 months. And that is something I'd like to see grow because there is so much that backyard observers with their extremely sophisticated equipment and dedication can offer to the professional community. And I think the professional community has a lot to learn from the observing community.
Now, there are lots of other amateur astronomy magazines around the world. So my first question is, do you consider yourself mostly North American based, or do you have a large presence elsewhere in the world?
We are currently mostly North American based. We have introduced a Southern Hemisphere star chart in the pages of the magazine. This particularly came about after Australian Sky and Telescope folded, and we wanted to provide something for the Southern Hemisphere readers. Having spent a lot of time in Europe, I know there are very many very fluent English speakers and readers in Europe, and I would not mind seeing more more of an inroads into Europe as well. And that is something, once the dust starts to settle a bit, those are things I'd like to explore a bit further. But what you said about the physical copy of the magazine, that is so important to us. It still is something that we really cherish and treasure. But the big thing is, and this is a little appeal to all of you, talk to all your friends, get everybody to subscribe. We need subscribers. That will keep the magazine as a physical copy. If we don't get more subscribers, we might end up going all digital as well, as everything else is gone. But I refuse to believe that's going to happen. So this is an absolute appeal to everybody here. Tell all your friends, just subscribe. But what did I want to say about, oh goodness.
Well, we were talking about overseas. Do you compare yourself against, say, Astronomy Now, or doesn't the BBC, I think, have some kind of Astronomy Now?
Oh, the BBC Sky at Night is absolutely
Night.
phenomenal, but I think that's only online, I believe.
Okay.
Astronomy Now is a very good magazine as well. But we do have we have contributors and we have subscribers in the UK. I'm also thinking of Northern Europe, where all the Nordic countries, everybody, they have lots of long nights during the winter, and when it gets particularly cold, it's very nice and clear, and they are all fluent in English.
Right. So, Dan looks like he's got a question or two here. You're trying to figure out what issues you're missing?
I just there's something about the tangible aspect of this thing.
Yeah.
Guy, I don't know whether he was shocked, amazed, appalled, or whatever, but I have multiple bookshelves of turn left at Orion's, and literally, I am complete or nearly complete in almost every year back to 1968. So, and there's something wonderful about just picking up, an issue from 1982, or
Well, I'll throw in a story to that effect. About 20 years ago, I got an email from a Jesuit in South Dakota saying, you may have heard of back in the 60s a Sioux wise man, Black Elk. And what people don't realize was that he was also a Catholic deacon. And he's up for canonization. All right, this is lovely. The local people tell us that on the night of his funeral, there was a spectacular aurora borealis. And that would have been in August of 1948. Could you check that out? I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to check this out? What do? We go to our shelves. There's Sky and Telescope in 1948, and they actually report the spectacular aurora that was seen on that night.
That's an incredible story. I love that.
So, I don't know that it's going to contribute to his sainthood, but it's an example of the wide range, the wide reach of a magazine like Sky and Telescope. Is it challenging? One of our people here are asking, is it challenging to work on an issue that's many, many months in advance?
Oh, that's such a good question. One gets into the routine. I think the biggest challenge is for the science news articles, because by the time it comes out 4 months later, it's kind of like old news. But I personally have always enjoyed the little news notes, the 4 pages that we have at the front, because even if it's something that I read when it broke 4 months ago, it's always fun to be reminded again of, oh, that was an exciting thing that happened. When it comes to the observing material, it's not terribly challenging because we plan ahead, like a year ahead. We schedule the observing authors a year ahead so they have time to observe and so on. But what is challenging is, because we're working 4 months ahead, is whenever, if you were to ask me now, oh, what's in the sky right now? I have no clue because I'm working in June. So I always have to sort of stop and think and, reset myself. I'll go out and look, but it doesn't stick because what I'm working on is June sky. So that's the most challenging.
In this crowd, there are some professional astronomers, some very advanced amateurs, some people who just like looking at the sky. But we also have a number of people who are writers.
Yeah.
In your head, what is the perfect Sky and Telescope article?
Oh.
At least the parameters, how long, how many pictures.
Okay. So technical details, if you're interested in writing for us, and we love getting new authors, we have the instructions on our homepage, skyandtelescope.org. Scroll down to the bottom. There's, I think, how to pitch a story to Sky and Tel, or something like that. We generally ask, so this is one of the things I had to learn. So basically, I had to learn how to become an editor in about a month. So one of the things I learned is that for a 6-page article in our magazine, 2,400 words is what we look for. That'll create a 6-page article. And generally speaking, the editors root around for the artwork. And sometimes they'll work with the authors depending on the nature of the article. Sometimes if it's an observer, they might also do imaging and they'll submit their images of the targets they talk about in the article. Some authors don't submit any artwork whatsoever. Some submit sketches. For the science articles, the science editor often works in conjunction with the author on, or mainly with our illustrators on diagrams. They create diagrams. And so a lot of the putting the final article together is up to the editors. So the writer, it's a good pitch, 2,400 words for a 6-page article, and go ahead and submit it.
Do you have any particular stories that stand out to you, either in that, oh my gosh, this is so perfect for us, or what in the world am I supposed to do with this?
I think, well, the nature of the articles are so different. And I have to say, I also enjoy our columns a lot, our one-page columns, and where we just focus on a bit of mythology or one target or something like that. What has stood out? Well, Al over there has submitted quite a few articles for our Going Deep column, and they're always a lot of fun because, as the title of the column says, Going Deep means you're really using the large apertures and really going beyond just scratching the surface of how to observe these targets, but really trying to demonstrate to the reader how they too can access the same targets. Some of some of the articles I've liked the most, let's say in the more general observing section, have been I like very much the articles that focus maybe on a constellation and the observer who plucks out all the different types of object in the constellation with a variety of different types of instruments. And, you know, from binoculars to small refractors to bigger reflectors and possibly even some naked eye stuff with a story about the constellation, a story about their observing experiences and so on. Those are articles that I have enjoyed the most, let's say, working on myself.
So I'm going to end up, since we're coming to close to the close, but I'll give you a few minutes. This is, after all, the Vatican Observatory and Foundation talking about this. So I'm going to ask you the sort of deeper, why do we do this question? And again, I'll start with the story. I usually give talks, you know, why do I do astronomy? It was not to get rich, it's not to get famous, it wasn't to get girls, or at least it didn't work for me. And you know, I'll point at my collar. Except I know somebody for whom it did work, and it's a friend of several of us here, Rick Hill. The story goes that his bride-to-be insisted that he sell the telescope or else dump her. So he put the telescope for sale, and the woman who bought the telescope is the woman he married. So,
I love that story.
So astronomy can work that way.
I wonder if he's written a focal point for us. I bet he must have, but I would love to run that one again.
Oh, that'd be great. You should get to him. So my question for you, why do you think that this astronomy, what is it that it obviously isn't going to make you rich or famous or you know, solve all of the world's problems. What is it that's lasting about looking at the sky?
Where does one start? But the simple answer in my mind is because it's there and it's accessible. And it's, I mean, apart from clouds and so on, and summertime in the north and everything, but it's there for everybody. Before you get into the binoculars and equipment, so on, all you have to do is step out and look up, and you have access to the sky. And so that's a very simple, superficial answer. The next one is, so you step outside and you look up. It's just so darn pretty. It's just so, who doesn't like twinkly, sparkly things? You know, it's just so beautiful to look at. So those are the superficial answers. The deeper answers, the deeper thoughts that I have, I can't remember the last time I actually thought to myself, why do I do this? Because I just do it because it's a passion, and that I think is something that we all share. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it, like you said. And a passion is something that drives people without analyzing it. It just drives people. But obviously, there's that constant connection with something that is outside of us, outside of ourselves, that is so one is at a loss for words. Just thinking about doing the distance scale in one's head and just marveling at the fact that we can see things close by, we can see things far away, and then thinking, how did they come about? And what led to all of this? And how did it all start 13 billion years? And then I'm here to see that? How does this happen? And I think it's just that incredible sense of all of the cogs turning in one's brain and all of those thoughts jumbled together when you gaze upon a distant galaxy. I just see all of that just coming whoosh together, you know. The thoughts are all there, from the Big Bang to galaxy formation to the expansion to us here, one can't stop thinking about it. And at least that's what probably drives me.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for coming here. If anyone's got any questions, this is your chance to throw them in. But I think if we turn this into a podcast, you just gave us the ending there. I can't top that.
Thank you. Thank you
Well,
so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll see you in the next full moon.
Bye.
And tomorrow.
Thank you.
And tomorrow, of course.
And tomorrow. Bye.
Bye-bye.